Hello, members of the Civil Air Patrol. I'm Chaplain Tim Miner, the Virginia Wing Chaplain and Executive Officer to the Chief of Chaplains. Today, we are in an exceptionally good place. We have the privilege to be addressing and talking with the Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Space Force, Roger A. Towberman. He serves as the highest enlisted level in leadership, and as such provides direction for the enlisted force and represents their interests to the American public and to all levels of the government. This is our nation's newest military service, and it's just a great opportunity to have Chief Towberman with us this morning. Also with me is Lieutenant Colonel Shirley Rodriguez, the National Character Development Instructor and wingman to our Chief of Chaplains. I also have with me Cadet Master Sergeant Thomas McKinney from the North Carolina Wing. He is the North Carolina Wing's non-commissioned officer cadet of the year and the nominee to the Region NCO Cadet of the Year. We also have Cadet Master Sergeant Brista Stevens from the Virginia Wing. So thank you to the entire team that's gathered together. Chief Towberman, again, thank you so very much for joining with us and addressing the cadets and senior members around the United States and in locations around the world, actually. And we're just anxious to hear from you about the Space Force and give you the opportunity to tell us what's really happening now on your third year as the Space Force is developing. Sir, could you help our cadets and senior members understand the important missions that our Guardians are doing right now as part of that newest military service?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Chaplain, and thanks for letting me come here and talk to you all. In one of my previous lives, when I was an airman, I worked for the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, and we oversaw everything that Civil Air Patrol does. And so I've been a huge fan of your work. It's so important. I think it's really just kind of a special place in America that Civil Air Patrol has and everything that you do. And so I just, before we start, I just really wanted to say thanks. Thanks for everything that all of you do. And it's just really a privilege and honor to come here and talk to you today. So, yeah, we're the newest military service, as you said, but of course, our space missions are quite old, going all the way back to the early 90s. Desert Storm 1 was known as the first space war, where we, as a Department of Defense, used a nascent global positioning satellite system back then to navigate a featureless desert in the middle of the night. And every day since then, whether it's the precision navigation and timing that we get from GPS, or whether it's the weather reports that we get from satellite weather, or the information that we get from intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance from space, or whether it's the communications that we route through space, satellite communications that not just military communications, but all communications these days almost run through space. And so you think about all of these things and how space is interwoven into American life. If you if you use Waze to get around when you're driving, that's brought to you by the Space Force. If you use GPS to find your way, if you take money out of an ATM or get on your computer, those the very important timing signals that make all of those computers run, and all the banks run, and all the planes and trains and everything execute, all of that is enabled by the precision navigation and timing signals that we get from space. And all of those satellites are driven and protected by the United States Space Force. So our mission to provide unfettered access to and freedom to maneuver in space isn't just about war fighting, although it certainly is. It's really about all of modern life that's enabled by our access to space, and our belief as a nation and as a department that that should be, that there should be free access and freedom to maneuver in space so that we can continue to provide that. So it's really just a continuation of a long journey that's brought us to a place where we're very dependent on space, and that everything from disaster relief to warfighting and everything in between there's the Space Force right in the middle of all of it.
Thank you. As a former weather officer and senior weather officer in the Air Force, I have to say how much I certainly have appreciated the products and the satellite operators there at Schriever providing that weather intelligence that was so critical to the missions that I was part of, and as an aviator as well. Thank you so much for that that weather intelligence. I know your background is in crypto and in cyber. How important is that mission to the Space Force?
Yeah, so for sure, right? So I've got a few hours in the sky myself, and always relied on a good weather forecast and a good navigation signal. And you never wanted to imagine having to dead reckon your way from point to point, or guess at what the weather was going to be. And so my life literally in the hands of weathermen and navigators for many hours. And so relying on that was a big deal. Yeah, so we use space certainly for ISR, and also for those very important timing signals that that all of our sort of encryption techniques, our radios, all that stuff relies on those things today. It really is literally nothing happening in the modern world that doesn't rely on getting that right. There's not this clock tower in Greenwich, England, where everybody's time hacking their watch to. It's just not how it works anymore.
Very good. Well, the Civil Air Patrol Chaplain Corps is very much interested in core values, and they were called the keepers of the core values for our organization. And that's in my intelligence within the Space Force. I've heard that the NCO Corps of the Space Force actually is taking the lead in developing core values. With you now in your third year as a military service, what can you tell us? What intel could you tell us about the core values right now that are developing, and perhaps give us some hints of where you're going with that in the future?
Yeah, for sure. And I think kind of like Civil Air Patrol, I believe our mission as a Space Force is not just to find guardians and onboard them and teach them our tradecraft and then send them on their way. It's really to develop them and invest in them so that they're better human beings, that they're better citizens, and that when we return them, whether that's after 4 years or after 40 years, that they're better than when they came to us. And I think that that's kind of shaped this whole conversation about core values. It's certainly a mission imperative, and there's things that we need beyond that. However, is this commitment that we have to everyone that raises their hand and wants to be a member of the team. And so it has been sort of, I guess you could say it was led, certainly originally we asked a couple Chief Master Sergeants to take the lead and stand up the team. From the very beginning of the core values journey has been all inclusive. Civilians, officers, enlisted, guardians have all been part of those conversations. And we brought everyone together, 2 years ago now. And we brought all these folks together, and we spent several days talking about what values are, why they're important, why industry uses them, why the services use them. And then we just had kind of open conversations about the concepts that people believed were important, not jumping to kind of the words, but to really talk about what ideals we thought were important and what concepts we thought were important. And we got a pretty good list together, and then we took that list and we got together with some social scientists, some cultural experts, and we sat down with some folks, and we started to take those concepts and put some words to them. And then we went back to that original group that met. And that was sort of the recurring theme through the process, as we continue to go back to this same group to say, hey, that you were here when we started. Are we still where, you know, you thought we should be? Are we meeting the mark? And so that's how we came up with our 4 core values of connection, commitment, courage, and character. And of all of those, it was really the value of connection that time and time again came up with our conversations with guardians, in particular with young people, as something very, very important to them, and something not necessarily unique. I think if you look across any of the core values of any of the other services, you'll find this importance placed on teamwork, on knowing each other, on being good good wingmen or good battle buddies. You know, it's all there. It's individually called out for us in the Space Force as connection because it was so important in these conversations. And so we're really proud of that, of all 4 of them. And now as we're sort of laying the long text, if you will, that goes behind those 4 core values, so people aren't guessing what we mean when we say commitment or what we mean when we say courage. And so that work is ongoing. And again, we keep going back to that original group. And I think by the end of the year, we'll have sort of that book, if you will, that kind of gives you the long read of why they're important and what specifically all 4 of the values mean. The other thing that we're trying hard to do is to not make our core values effort independent, but that it's interwoven in everything else that we're doing. So as we're building our professional military education, as we're building our technical training, as we're building our promotion system, the core values are center in all of those conversations. We really would prefer it, since we're starting from scratch, if a guardian could come in and learn 4 core values and then not have to learn different things depending on the setting. Like, this will be the 4 things that drive professional military education. This will be the 4 things that drive the way that we rate your performance. These will be the 4 things that drive how we decide who to promote, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even our annual awards will be centered around our 4 core values. In fact, we will have 4 Guardians of the Year instead of the normal kind of categorization that you would see by NCO or officer. It's open to all guardians, and we'll have a guardian of courage and a guardian of commitment and so on. And so we're really trying hard to operationalize these values and make them something that guardians kind of live and breathe all the time.
Well, that's great intel. Are we allowed to share those four C words?
Share away. Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Well, thank you so very much. Great. And we'll be looking for, I guess the Air Force just republished its little blue book last Friday. Whatever color book you all decide to have, we'll be looking forward to that as well. But what is the significance of these core values coming primarily from, I guess, from the NCO Corps? What that sounds really significant.
Yeah, well, I think that in kind of in the world today, maybe like when I was growing up, we were taught that leadership was about knowing the answers, right? You were expected to know things and then give direction to a team. And leadership today is really about asking questions. It's not about knowing the answers. It's about asking questions and gathering information from your team, and then helping that team find their way. And so I think that was really why this was important, is that we opened our ears and we listened to what was important to guardians, with the understanding, with the belief that there will be buy-in to these core values from the very beginning, because they really kind of organically sprouted from our own force. This isn't something that, a couple of us up here in the Pentagon sat down and said, oh, these would be good things, so teach them to everyone else. This was really about kind of asking folks what they felt would be important, and with an eye on a future where where we need them, right? I need folks to be willing to talk and listen and to really focus on team-centric behavior. The time when any one of us is going to know everything is long gone. And so the better, more team-centric approach we have to solving problems, the better we'll be able to operate.
Thank you so much for that great conversation. I'll turn the next question over to Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chaplain Miner. Sir, we in the Civil Air Patrol live by our core values, and we instill in our cadets to apply them in every aspect of their lives. Thinking about your 4 core values, how does that play into that warrior spirit of all your guardians across Space Force?
Yeah, so like I said before, I think this is what's so special about Civil Air Patrol is this concept of weaving it into everything, and it really is I think the thing that we share, because that's absolutely what we want to do. So I've been doing this a long time, and 19 deployments in my career, and several 1,400 days in faraway places that my family would have preferred I didn't go to, and many thousands of hours in the air over combat zones, and so I got to really look close at this thing we call warfighting, and how important understanding that tradecraft is, how important deterrence is to real warriors, right? I've had the very sorrowful experience of saying goodbye to many, some very close friends, and many others that I knew. So it's very serious business on defending the nation and being ready to fight and win in any domain. And I think that the core values are really central to all of that. You've got to be connected. You've got to be good teammates. You've got to know that others are more important than yourself, and that it's as a team that you'll find the best solutions. You've got to have courage, not just in the face of immediate danger, but the courage to speak up when you see something wrong, when you see a mistake being made, to raise your hand and go, I think we might be missing something. You've got to be committed to improving all the time. Like every team relies on every team member being good at why they're on the team, right? Like you've got to be able to play your position the best before the team can really count on you fully. And so that's where commitment comes in for us. And finally, character. I've been on a couple truly elite teams, and trust was a central theme. You've got to be able to trust everyone that's there, and as the kind of danger increases or the seriousness of the effort increases, the need for trust increases as well. So I would always would say that the two things present in every great warfighting team that I've seen is that each member was an expert on the reason that they were there, and that all contracts that were made were kept. That if you said, I'll be at this place at this time, or you'll have this information on this at this moment, that you kept those promises. And so I think that's where kind of all of those things, all 4 of our core values, point straight to a warfighting ethos, straight to kind of what's necessary to win in battle.
Thank you so much. And I just have another question.
Yes.
For the Civil Air Patrol, wellness and resiliency is such an integral part of our training. And we all know that the Space Force is the newest branch of the Air Force. How do you incorporate resiliency? Because we all know that we don't want to see any lives lost. And unfortunately, that's just part of the military. How have you incorporated wellness and resiliency within your Corps?
Yes, so we're still working through that. I think that really the most important part of this conversation is that while care has to be available when someone needs it, that the further left of needing care you can get to help folks understand why being close to each other is important, why staying physically fit is important, why practicing mental fitness is important. The more you can do to sort of invest in a strategy that builds truly and comprehensively fit human beings, the better off you'll be. And the world is complicated these days, and it's not something that we can assume that when someone shows up and puts on a uniform that they understand resilience as well as they should. So it's a multifaceted effort that involves education, that involves training, that will involve continuous fitness assessments is where we're headed, so that all times we'll know if somebody's kind of green or yellow, caution yellow, or red if they really need some help. And our expectation is that on a daily basis, we're all checking ourselves for indicators of challenges, and that we're checking each other, checking our teammates. So I think we've got some really good aspirations. We've got a good plan. We call the holistic health assessment. We've got the work to do, though, to get it all laid in, which hopefully by the end of the year, the plan is by the end of the year to have that stuff laid in. And we're also using embedded teams to include chaplains and religious affairs, airmen, mental health technicians, and mental health professionals, and also physical fitness, strength and conditioning coaches, all kinds of opportunity to have investments made in the resilience of our guardians. So we've got a long way to go to lock it in, but we've got a great plan, and we've got great human beings that are working on it. So I look forward to, come back in a year and I'll be able to say this and this and this, all these things are happening now, instead of we're still planning and standing up.
Well, thank you, sir, for your insights and for your really look into how the operation of the Space Force runs. With that said, I'll turn it back over to Chaplain Miner, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for your service too.
Cadet McKinney, I understand you have a question, please.
Yes, Chaplain. Chief, thank you so much, for taking the time to talk with us today. But what I really want to focus on was that you've talked about trust and the need to know when to step up, and importantly, when to step down, let other people who are more experienced take the reins. But what are some of the important traits that you believe are important for future leaders of Guardians?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I really think leaders have to listen. It's really important. I think leaders need to be open and honest about who they are. It's another, I think, thing that has changed over the course of my career is that if I want people to trust me, then I need to be who I really am in front of them. And that hasn't always been the case. I was certainly 30 years ago, it was encouraged, if not taught directly, to kind of, present yourself in a certain way. But those times have changed. And so I encourage all leaders to be genuine, to be sincere about who they are, and to not be afraid to admit when they're struggling. There's a lot of credibility. There's a lot of trust garnered by someone saying, hey, you know what, this is hard. And I may not have all the answers right now, but I got your back, and I care about this, and we're going to work through it together. We're seeing more and more that that's the kind of attitude and the kind of honesty and transparency and sort of genuine style that people appreciate these days, and that people feel safe putting their trust in. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Chief, I believe it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Chaplain, I believe I can give it back to you.
Thank you very much. And Cadet Stevens, what question would you like to ask the Chief?
Yes. So first, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to meet you and for you to be here. So you talked about how there's a lot of types of traits that people have that makes them better leaders. But what types of skills do you think that Civil Air Patrol cadets can develop that will better them for the future and make them better guardians of the future?
Yeah, so we obviously we're a highly technical service. So I think, you know, doing well in school, I don't want to sound like your parents, but it is important, and kind of learning science and math and engineering. It's such a part of kind of the modern world, and it's such a part of our future. And so I think that that's kind of where it starts, is to really make sure that you learn the basics, that you understand computers. We're very much trying to be a digital service and have sort of a kind of digital philosophy on everything we're doing. So people with programming skills, people with a better understanding of networks, of artificial intelligence, of machine learning, like these concepts, big data analysis, these things are important to us, as are all the sort of aerospace fundamentals and that we need to understand orbital mechanics, to understand rockets, to understand space, the space environment, the space domain. So I think that's all really important. Don't forget also sort of training your imagination. We need artists and musicians and people that can think big and bold and imagine different ways. Sometimes we get a little tied down by the hard sciences, and they're not as kind of freeing and of the imagination as they could be. And that at the end of the day, it isn't good if no one on your team has an imagination. So I really think, kind of from a skills perspective, especially for young people, you can't be too varied in your pursuits. You can't have too many interests. You can't. There's literally nothing bad to learn. If you're learning, it's good. And whether you're memorizing all the birds of North America, or whether you're playing the piano, or whether you're doing high-end algebra or trigonometry, I think it's all really useful. And I find that the many things that I've learned through my life, they're all applicable at some point or another. You know, everything comes up at some point. So I just think, you know, learning all the time and this desire to be better. I got to speak to some folks at one of the major civilian space companies that you would all know for sure, and one of what we call one of the billionaires in space, right? There's a few of them. But I was talking to one of their head engineers and human capital experts, and he said to me, I'll never forget, he said that the one thing that's most predictive of long-term success in their company and in life was a desire to self-improve, and that when they saw that in people, that was the thing that they wanted to grab onto, sort of assuming that they could teach everything that needed to be taught. They could teach all the engineering, they could teach all the math, they could teach all the robotics. But you can't teach someone to want to learn and to want to get better all the time. So I think learning when you're young to cultivate that is I think probably the most important thing any of us could do, and we should never discourage anybody from learning anything, because it's really it's just really such a powerful trait to have. Hopefully that answers your question. Where are you in Virginia, young lady?
I am in Hanover Composite Squadron.
Okay, maybe that's not too far down the road. Maybe one of these days we can, when you guys are having a meeting or whatever, maybe I can swing down the road and say hello.
Yes, sir. Or yes, Chief, please do.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out.
Very good. Well, again, Chief, thank you so very, very, very much for taking the time to address the Civil Air Patrol and cadets. Before we say goodbye, you have 25,000 of the nation's best high school students. What would you like to say to them?
Yeah, man, when you put it that way, it's a lot of pressure, right? I just say thanks. I really do. I just appreciate your willingness to be involved as citizens, as great human beings in this nation in any way possible. Certainly Civil Air Patrol is a fantastic mission and a fantastic opportunity. Please keep investing in yourselves and know that I believe in you. I think you can do anything at all. And maybe the last thing I'd say is this importance to be yourself. I don't think there's ever been a time when that's been more important than it is right now. We need people that are genuine and true to who they are. You have to be getting better all the time. We want you to be the best version of you and to try every day to be better. But you don't need to change who you are. You're pretty good just the way you are. So just thanks for everything you do for yourselves and for each other. If I can be of any help to any of the chapters, I just really so appreciate the mission. So please stay in touch. Let me know if I can help. Thanks for everything you do. And I think that's about covers it. Thank you so much.
Well, again, our guest today was the Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force, Roger Towberman. Thank you so much, sir, again, for being with us. And on behalf of the entire Civil Air Patrol, again, it has been our blessing to have you with us. And we look forward to interacting with you. And I'll bet you'll find quite a few invitations coming to you to come and appear and interact with, again, some of our greatest future citizens in our country. And I'll bet quite a few future guardians that will look forward to working for you and with you. So again, on behalf of the Civil Air Patrol, thank you so very much.
Thanks, Chaplain.